Good afternoon. When my family's involvement in the climate movement comes up in conversation, I often get one of two responses. The trending reply is usually something to do with glue. The more sincere reaction, and the one I try to engage with, is a mixture of respect, sadness, and guilt. Respect for doing something, anything, in the face of this overwhelming crisis facing us, our children, our life on this planet. And that's followed by sadness at the state of things, the money-grubbing greed of corporations, the inaction of governments, sadness in knowing that 2023 will be the warmest year on record. But the respect and sadness of these bright, sincere, well-meaning people is eclipsed by the guilt they feel for not doing more because they are so busy and so stressed. And it's often the mothers who feel particularly guilty. As mothers, as parents, we are familiar with guilt. Guilt, schlechtes Selbstbewusstsein, also ja, wenn man sich genau einredet, dass man nicht gut genug ist, ist guilt. Guilt for being too strict with our children, or for being too lenient, for letting them eat chocolate when they haven't eaten all their vegetables, for letting them watch more television than the recommended screen time for their age group. We feel guilty for picking them up later than we said we would, for not wanting to build a cave out of blankets for the 100th time, for cheating at board games so they win, or for not cheating at board games so that they learn what it's like to lose. As parents, we are capable of feeling guilty all the time because we care about our children. We want the best for them. We want to do what's right, and that's not always easy. It's this guilt that brings me here today. I feel guilty because I fear that no matter how many healthy things he eats, how many creative games we play, or how hard I try to build his tolerance for frustration by not letting him win every board game, I won't be able to build enough resilience in my child in order for him to come to terms with what it's like to really lose. To lose a future of peace, a future of fulfillable dreams. To lose the future that our cultural narrative continues to tell him he can have if he's hardworking, kind, and obedient. So we go to protests like this one. We teach him that cars are bad for the environment and that bikes are good for the environment. We don't eat meat, we avoid flying, we try to reduce plastic. And still, we feel guilty because we are trapped in the hamster wheel of a system that seems impossible to change. For those of us here today, we carry that guilt not on our own, but together and outward. Yes, we aim to be inclusive in our guilt. We demand that our government feel a bit of guilt. Feel guilty for not keeping our child hydrated while giving a presentation. We demand that our government act with our interests in mind and not in the interest of corporations. For institutions like Deutsche Bank, who are unable to regulate themselves, we demand that they be regulated. Since 2016, Deutsche Bank has lent over 26 billion euros to 46 international energy companies, mostly to the fossil fuel industry, such as Shell, ExxonMobil, Total Energies, and BP. These, in turn, are involved in oil, gas, and coal projects with an enormous and irrevocable impact on the climate and our children's future. This needs to stop. But I feel so frustrated in demanding that our elected officials regulate dangerous off-the-rails free market capitalism when the government can't even manage to spend the money it intends to invest in climate projects because it was initially intended for COVID measures. And so we come here on a cold November afternoon with our children in order to point out the latest insanity of the week, like taking 60 billion euros away from climate change mitigation because it's not sensible to incur more debt. Insane because the evidence is clear for all to see that it is exponentially more expensive than to react to climate change than to act on climate change. Instead of building blanket caves, we point out obvious inconsistencies and clashes between the actions of governments and corporations and the words of these same governments and corporations. We do this in the hope that this will resonate, that others will join us, that we will indeed rise like the water, and that those in power will listen before much more is lost. Now that I've carried my guilt outward for a moment, I feel anger, but also love and empowerment. And I encourage everyone here, everyone listening, walking by, to follow your own path of action. Act on your sadness, act on your guilt. We all feel compelled to act in the best interest of our children. We don't always get it right, but this, safeguarding a hopeful future, is one thing we need to get right. Thank you.